Welcome to the Align It podcast. I'm your host, Ted Klauser, and today I have a very special guest with me. John Humphrey is a leading figure in the AI technology space based in Dallas, Texas. John graduated from Southern Methodist University, or SMU, and has since become a prominent innovator in artificial intelligence. He is currently at the forefront of cutting-edge research and development, working on projects that aim to reduce bias in AI systems. John's expertise and dedication to ethical AI practices have made significant impacts in the field. We're excited to have him to share his journey and his insights. Well, welcome to the show, John.
All right, thanks, Ted. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive right in. Let's talk about AI. And obviously, from a business perspective, businesses need to align AI with their goals and their outcomes. So let's talk a little bit about it. Let's just dive into what that looks like.
Yeah, I think you got to back up and define what it is we're talking about when people say AI. I mean, artificial intelligence is like a container, and inside that container are different tools. Generative AI, the buzz and the rage right now, is one of those tools. You also have deep learning, machine learning. You have neural language processing. So when somebody just says AI, I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And in fact, that's how we came to start CoPoint. Is my former clients were calling me and saying, the board wants us to do AI. We're not sure what it means. Could you come help us?
Well, talk to me a little bit about who John is. How did you get here in the first place?
Yeah, so I moved to Dallas in 1980 to go to SMU, and I never went back home. Originally from New Jersey, born in California, so traveler. And went to SMU and got a double major in finance and economics. Parlayed that into I started at a bank and ended up in the restaurant business, and went back and got my master's degree in 1990 in MIS in marketing. Went to work for Accenture, and then I started down my little entrepreneurial path. I learned how to sell enterprise software. Started a business called Party Veda Solutions in 2003. Which is still thriving today. Sold my interest about 10 years later. Wrote a book called Connect for Life. Our go-to-market strategy for building custom software, we had no commission salespeople, so we did everything without a direct sales force. Wow. And so that was kind of a thing. Wrote a book about it, and then I've spent the last decade coaching and helping as a fractional chief revenue officer other firms like that. So companies 10 to probably 40, 50 million in revenue that are trying to grow, some with sales teams, some hybrid, some without. And I sort of got dragged back into the game
All right.
last year.
Well, talk a little bit about what made you get out in the first place. What made you want to begin that change a decade ago?
Well, every business that has partnerships, sometimes the people that are running the business get to a point where they have different objectives and different expectations. And so my expectation was somewhat different than my partners. We had a very amicable split. It was very good for me. We were an ESOP company, so we had a mechanism to take care of all that. I really love small companies, and we had gotten to about 50, 60 million in revenue, and we need a real CFO
right.
and a real COO, and I'm just a guy in the field that likes to solve problems for customers. That's what I love to do. I'd gotten away from that, and so that's kind of what I'm back doing.
Well, there's so many things that we could talk through.
Yeah.
I love just the diversity of your background. But I do want to just start with focusing on the alignment from an AI perspective. Yeah. Let's talk about how businesses need to be thinking about AI. Should businesses be thinking about AI?
Well, they definitely should. I think this feels very much like the dot-com era of the 2001s. We have, the Mag 7 and NVIDIA that are in bubblicious territory. But the principle of a fundamental shift in the way business is done, you can't argue that Amazon didn't set the standard way back when on service after the sale. But there were some other big failures. One of the CEO at Accenture at the time George Shaheen quit Accenture to become the CEO of a company called Webvan. They raised about $500 million, and you've never heard of them.
Right.
So I think we're in that sort of territory. I also think if you look at product adoption life cycles, we're flirting with the chasm. So we've gone through some of the innovator. We're in early adopter to early majority. If you remember from that curve, you have this hype curve, and then you get the trough of disillusionment, and then you get the path up to where it makes a difference in everyday companies. So it's still early yet. That means 85% of organizations, whether they're early majority, late majority, or laggards, still haven't adopted any of this technology. And I think it's going to be a game changer, and I can give you some anecdotes on how I think that's going to happen. But even the laggards today, the companies that need demonstrable results before they tiptoe into the water, need to have people that are playing with this technology. They need to be learning about generative AI. They need to understand the difference between deep learning and machine learning. They need to understand where natural language processing can help. I mean, nobody would argue if I give you sort of three examples. One would be e-commerce. I buy a clicker, it breaks, I take a picture of it, it's broken, I write a letter, I send it back to Amazon, they put the money back in my account, a human never touches it. An AI agent reads the letter, gives me a response, reviews the picture, says it's broken, and puts the money back in my account. If Visa today had to physically audit the 6 to 8 million transactions an hour that they have, they would never be able to do it with humans. All of those alerts that you get on your credit card that say, is this you? Are you sure? That's all AI driven. Mostly machine learning models that have been trained about what individual consumers' priorities are and patterns are, and when things get outside those parameters, flags go up and they say this charge is not a normal. You don't normally go to Neiman's on a Thursday afternoon and spend $10,000. And then the third thing that's really happening in the wild, as we like to say, when things are being used by the public, we call it in the wild, is around what they call computer vision, which is looking at either video or images. Take, for example, scans of lung cancer. There's a lot of evidence of these AI models that are looking through X-rays to do red flags. In fact, there was a doctor in England that started experimenting with his interns. He would pattern this model to see if it came to the same conclusion that he did when he read an X-ray. He would use it to look at his interns, and then COVID hit. And they started using it first time out of the box because of the type of pneumonia that COVID caused. You could get early warnings and get people on antibiotics faster, and it saved thousands of lives. So these are things that are happening, and I think that it's going to get even more prolific. I mean, even today, as the models are, screaming and getting better, individuals are beginning to learn how to use them.
So for anyone watching that's highly tech savvy, can you talk about the difference between automation and AI? And when did this change? Because at what point did we really shift from automation over to this smarter intelligence?
Well, some of that is semantics. The automation that is the classic if then else logic has been around since we had spreadsheets. Right. And some processes work really, really well when you do that. You've heard of robotic process automation. It really never took off, but it was an attempt at using agents, AI agents, smart agents, to take processes and make them better. What artificial intelligence does is it tries, let's just talk about generative AI. Generative AI is trying to mimic a human response. So it has all this data, and it's saying, when I look at this data and these sort of parameters, how might I respond? Which is very interesting. If you ask the Gen AI tool to do math, it's terrible at math. Right. It can't do math. It's like you can't do 1 + 1 = 2 because it's being trained to infer. So it's very good for customer support. It's very good for coaching. CSRs or salespeople, like your person responded this way, and so you should say these things. It's very good at helping people write. There's been a lot of professors that have complained about plagiarism and that sort of thing, but we're using it for some really extraordinary ways, just in like basic stuff in delivering our services. So it's been a lot of fun.
So for the people listening that heard you reference .com and think of the bust,
Yeah.
how is AI different?
Well, I am not giving anybody any financial advice, but I would say that humans don't really learn and markets don't really learn and history tends to repeat itself. Mm-hmm. So there's something that's going to happen in our public markets, and that's really not my domain of expertise. But what I would say is that we will go from the high expectations through that trough, and some users, some companies, some organizations will sort of say, oh, I knew that was just a thing. It was just a fad. And then there's others that'll keep experimenting. Because what I've learned is the AI tools, the generative AI tools, the machine learning tools, won't make poor to average people better, but they'll make the really, really good ones leave everybody else in the dust. Because if you think about it from a tech perspective, like who are the best consultants? The ones that are very intellectually curious about the problems that their customers have. And they keep asking and asking and asking. And one of the keys to teaching a Claude or a ChatGPT is learning how to write the prompts.
Right.
The prompts are often the most... I listened to one of my partners the other day. He was typing in and he said, that's not a very good answer. If you don't give me a better answer, I'm going to get fired. And it gave a better answer.
Wow.
That's the inference, right? It's like, oh, I know, I've seen that pattern before. That pattern is sense of urgency, heart palpitations. So I would say stick with it. I was with a group of people this morning, and I basically said, if you're not playing with these things, then you can't understand the power of them. I can tell you that we can do a user workshop, we can scope work, we can write the user stories, we can deliver a proposal to a client in hours, whereas 10 years ago it would have taken one of my manager level or principal level people 5 days.
Right.
So order of magnitude and deliver, like, just think about, like, now every interview I do, I record it. Mm-hmm. And then I put that whole interview into Claude, and I said, we did a workshop the other day, we interviewed 15 people. We took all 15 of those interviews, all the transcripts, we loaded them into Claude and say, what are the things that all of these people from this company have in common? And we got an answer, and it was remarkable, really.
I've given some presentations recently on Microsoft Copilot, and I've actually compared AI to the calculator. If you were to hire somebody today and say, at our company, we don't use calculators, how many people would you hire? Do you think AI is going to be that way in 2 to 5 years?
Right. I tell people it's like having an intern. And a friend of mine said, no, it's actually worse than that. It's like having a teenager. Take out the garbage. You might come downstairs and find that it's just sitting outside the sliding glass door, not anywhere near the garbage can, right? So, I mean, oh no, I want you to collect the garbage from all the garbage cans in the house, put them in the main garbage can, take that garbage outside, walk it around to where the green barrel is, put the recycle in the blue one, and then take both those barrels and put them on the street so that the garbage men who are coming by in about an hour can find them. That is a prompt that you have to give a teenager. Mm-hmm. And I think if you think about it that way, at least with generative AI, you'll get amazing information.
How long do you think we will have to continue to prompt it in that manner before it becomes more advanced where we don't?
Well, it's advancing. I mean, I'm in this space. There's probably 10 new tools out there that I don't know about, right? And I know that, like, one of the reasons, and we're both Microsoft partners, one of the reasons we like Microsoft is they may not be the best when they get there first, but they're eventually going to get there with heft.
That's true.
And, Copilot probably today isn't as good as Claude.ai or ChatGPT because it's using a version of ChatGPT that's just a little bit older, but it's doing it with tens of millions of people I've never had it rewrite one of my emails that wasn't just slightly better than what I wrote myself. The fact that Copilot can index everything that's in a Microsoft tenant, whether it's in SharePoint or CRM or whatever, is just hugely powerful when you think about solving problems for clients and losing documents. And, oh, geez, I had this presentation 2 years ago that had a graph that looked like X. It can go actually find that graph in a PowerPoint that's buried in the annals of SharePoint. So I'm really bullish on the world.
Are you concerned that we've got Terminator ages ahead?
Not really.
Okay, good.
I mean, when my cell phone will work interrupted for a week everywhere I go, I'll worry about the machines. But right now, it's not that good. And we haven't even gotten to like the data part. Like everybody's so hooked on generative AI and the inference. Like I think the real exciting stuff is when we start running these machine learning models to develop insights and collisions for company data overlaid with industry or market data. And then, hey, did you know? Like share of wallet, supply chain, customer preferences. Amazon's been doing this for years, right? You go to buy a pair of Birkenstocks, you better be careful because you might end up with another brand.
Right.
You might like that brand just fine, but that may not be what you wanted to buy in the first place.
I just love the thoughts that this creates. And I'm sure for those listening, there's a lot of different things that are going through their head. Let's talk first as we begin to try to think of how to align this.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, what's one way that you could begin to dabble in this?
Well, I love the align it, the IT thing. For the most part, businesses and technology organizations inside of companies are not aligned. I think the IT organizations don't really think about their internal customer as a customer. So I think the first thing is a mindset. You need to be thinking about like you're the me for your internal customer, and you've got to be experimenting and bringing ideas, as opposed to if you just tell me what you want, I'll put it on the schedule and we'll get it built by next year. Right. That's the typical IT organization. What we try to do is we have a series of, we have this AI accelerator that's really fun. And we do about 2 weeks of prep. We interview all the people. We build a bespoke workshop. And then in that workshop, it's all analog. It's sticky notes and voting dots. And we don't tell anybody anything. We say, all right, here's 14 things in the wild that are adding value to companies. And it's AI or it's machine learning or it's one of these flavors that I've just talked about. And then you start with 88 ideas on the board. And we get down to 25. And then we end up with 10 actionable outcomes. Like we focus on what's the outcome that you want from this thing before we ever think about doing it. And I think a lot of tech companies are guilty of let's start with the cool tech and show you cool tech and then you'll sort of get it. But they don't get it. And then what's really fun is that when we finish, everybody's had this really great experience. They've learned a lot. And probably 60% of the 10 things are not AI at all. They're just, hey, we need one source of the truth, which is really important because unless you have a normalized data set, you can't train it on a model. You can't get advanced analytics. And those are very complex projects. And so we help our clients with that. But we start with like Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind.
And for the IT alignment, so think of the director of IT or the CIO who maybe says, I'm already overworked, I've got so many things, but I would love to lean into the power of AI.
Yeah.
What is one or two ways they can begin to align it?
Well, I think that the first thing you do is you have to put the time on your calendar. I've never met an IT person that wasn't trying to put 10 pounds of manure in a 5-pound bag, right? They're all, maybe they'll get their 25 budget done and deliver everything, but more likely not. So, and the problem with technology is people tend to learn the 20 or 25% of what they need in order to do their job. And then they stop learning and they stop being creative. And so if I was leading an IT organization, I would have a couple people whose had part of their responsibility was to learn about the different flavors of generative AI and how it might apply to the business. I would definitely start looking at getting their data aggregated and normalized in a data lake or a data warehouse so that we could start creating insights for the business. Because what you have to do is you have to just build a series of proofs of concept for the business user, attach a value to it. Here's how long it's going to take us to deliver it. And if we can do it iteratively and quickly, you might have a lot of value. I mean, what I'm describing is the IT organization should act more like a nimble consulting firm. And they're just different. So I think it's hard. I don't think it's impossible, but the world-class IT, we coined a term at CoPoint Data, I think we even trademarked it, called the business of IT. And our whole idea was that we should be running IT like a business.
Yes.
But that was 25 years ago, and it's still not there.
Well, but would you still say that's true?
I'd say the best businesses in the world are the ones that run IT like a business. And they have internal IT and they have external experts. And when they need to move the creative ball, they bring somebody in to sort of mix things up. And you just go around and look at some of the world-class organizations that have deployed technology for value. And yeah, I mean, Bezos was famous for, if you can't put it on one page, I don't want to hear about it. I don't need a 25-page deck.
Right. Right. And now if he has 25 pages, he can use AI to give him his one page.
Or maybe he can do it while he's, in orbit.
One of those things. So what are some metrics that you would say are AI-centered metrics? If you want to have a good gauge of how well your organization is leveraging AI, what are maybe one or two metrics?
Well, I don't think it's much different than the custom software development, right? You're applying technology to a problem to achieve an outcome. And my framework was I always called it between the lines. So every project should drive incremental revenue, lower cost of goods sold, higher net income, so lower SG&A, and risk management. And if you focus on those four things, revenue, COGS, SG&A, and risk, every business, some business have more risk to it, insurance. Sure. Some businesses have more variable COGS. The people business, my cost of goods sold is variable. It goes home every night, sometimes happy, sometimes not.
Right. Absolutely.
And I hope they come back tomorrow. So I apply those metrics, and usually we have a methodology when we do we call it a pre-proposal, which is not a statement of work. And it goes through our understanding of the problem. Here's our approach and how we might solve the problem. Here is a potential value proposition. If I can't get to what the value is that we hypothesize can be achieved from a project, I won't get to here's how much it's going to cost, because I'll just go to the next thing. Why bother? Competing capital. I think it's a winning combination. I've used it for 30 years, and it's never let me down.
Well, and yeah, you've clearly been highly successful in leaning into it. And so I guess, as we're nearing the end of the podcast, I want to talk about a couple things. One is what excites you the most about what you currently do?
Yeah.
And then the other is, how specifically do you anticipate AI being received in the next 6 months? By the world, by everyone.
Questions. So I think the answer to the first question is what am I excited about is probably the reason that I got back into the game, right? I'm not a solopreneur. I got payroll and problems and all the things that entrepreneurs have, but I missed that. I call it walking in ambiguity, where you don't really know where the result is going to come from, but you know how to do all the right things, and it's very unclear. And so you're navigating the ship among shoaly waters, and I just love that. I love the inspiring early stage companies. I love the idea that in an entrepreneurial business, the speed of the leader determines the rate of the pack. I mean, they're never going to run faster than you run.
Yes.
And I think that creates youth for me. And so just creating that really cool business with really smart, sharp people that love what they do and they care about our clients is really rewarding. Your second question about the next 6 months, I can't predict markets, and we're living in a really interesting time, politics notwithstanding, But I think this is going to continue to explode. This whole DeepSeek thing where the market kind of crashed on a Monday because everybody got worked up over the weekend. I mean, give me more compute. We were working on a project the other day, and and Claude said, "You can't do any more till after 5 o'clock." We had exceeded our limit, and so since the beginning of time, I was a Windows 3.0 user.
Okay.
PowerPoint was just as slow then as it is now.
Yeah.
And I remember Bill Gates was what did he say when asked the question, how much memory is going to be enough for a floppy drive? And he said, oh gosh, 1.44 meg ought to be more than anybody ever needs.
Right.
You can't have a slide that's 1 meg today. So I just think that it's going to continue to proliferate. Companies are going to continue to experiment, and the good companies with intellectually curious people that hire good partners to help them are going to distance themselves. I mean, I think that's the scary part if I'm in corporate America today, because I think as you come down the curve and you learn more, you accelerate faster up the other side, and you sort of leave people in the dust. I take one of my smartest guys, and I've watched him over the last 6 weeks. He's passionate. He's filling his family and home time with things that he loves, and he's learning faster than any of us. And I get to put him in front of a client every day, and they love him. So I think that's the model is chase something you love, and this is a great, very broad segment of the market.
Well, I think speed is incredible, and as we tie this to a bow and we talk about how do we align it together, let's talk to the person listening that needs to know, how do I not outkick my coverage? How do I go the right amount at the right speed when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the principles that we learned back with software development, is that make sure you know what the value is of doing it, fail fast, fix it, and keep going, and do small projects. Anything more than 90 days is too big.
So, John, if anyone listening wanted your help, how would they reach you and how would they engage?
So, John Humphrey, you can find me on LinkedIn. We also have a website, www.copointdata.com. So, info@CoPointData, john@copointdata.com. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. I write a lot, and have been fairly prolific over the last 20 years.
Excellent. Well, John, I am honored to have you on the show. Certainly from a technology perspective, if you need coaching on anything, we would love to be a part of that. PCATechSolutions.com, and I hope this helps you align it.